You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. LSU, couple of weeks from the start of spring football. We learned last week that Brian Polian was moving from his on-field role into an off-field role, and that left a vacancy among LSU's 10 full-time on-field positions, and that has now been filled. Shea Dixon and others reporting today that John Jancek is being promoted from his role as an analyst with LSU to a dual role on field as the outside linebackers coach, and he'll also have the title of special teams coordinator. In addition, Bob Diaco is also joining LSU's staff today, this year. Bob Diaco, you might remember, was on Brian Kelly's staff, was his defensive coordinator, then went and became the head coach at UConn, and has bounced around a little bit since then. So there's a lot I want to get to with respect to this conversation. First and foremost, my thought was, when I saw this news, is Brian Kelly is building his staff the way that Nick Saban did at Alabama, has recently, in that he is hoarding elite coaches. In the same way that, like, Steve Sarkisian was an analyst at Alabama. Now the guy who had been the head coach at Washington, USC, now the head coach at Texas, was an analyst at Alabama. Todd Grantham was an analyst at Alabama. Been the DC at Florida and Georgia and Mississippi State. He's now the Saints defensive line coach. Grantham was an analyst at Alabama. Butch Jones had been the head coach at Western Michigan and Cincinnati and Tennessee, analyst at Alabama. Right? Like, Nick would just go hoard great coaches and just have them on staff. And then when ultimately a job came open, oh, we need an offensive coordinator? Sark. Boom, there you go. So it looks like Brian Kelly is kind of doing the same thing here. Now, John Jancek and Brian Kelly have a long history together. Jancek played football at Grand Valley State when Brian Kelly was a young assistant. Jancek coached at Grand Valley State in the early 1990s. So they have they and their families, I know, have a very long history together. The Kellys, the Denbrocks, the Janceks all have ties with their families, have coached together and very close and have been for 30 years. So some skeptics may look at this and go, Brian Kelly's hiring his friends. Except that John Jancek is really accomplished. Like, John Jancek has been a defensive coordinator at places like Colorado State and Cincinnati, but also at Georgia and at Tennessee. Like, he was on staff at Georgia in 2021 when they won the national championship a year ago. Then Brian Kelly brought him to LSU. So this is a guy that is overqualified to be your outside linebackers coach, essentially, is the way to put it. Kind of like when Nick Saban hired Doug Marrone. That's right. Former NFL head coach Doug Marrone to be his offensive line coach. You know what I mean? Like, John Jancek is overqualified to be the outside linebackers coach. So I'm great with that. You got a dude that's got a ton of experience, a ton of SEC experience, a guy that's coordinated defenses in the SEC, who's now coaching your outside linebackers. And Shea Dixon also noted that while we're waiting on a formal announcement from LSU, Shea did also note that Jancek will also hold the title of special teams coordinator. So he'll coach the outside linebackers and he'll be the special teams coordinator, but all indications are that it's kind of going to be a joint effort in coordinating the special teams unit, which kind of brings you to the other guy that they've added to staff, which is Bob Diaco. Now, again, follow me here with Bob Diaco. Bob Diaco has been the defensive coordinator at Purdue, at Cincinnati, at Nebraska, at Notre Dame. He was the head coach at UConn. Bob Diaco won the Broyles Award as the best assistant in college football in 2012 when Notre Dame went to the BCS National Championship game, got blown out by Alabama. He was the defensive coordinator for that team, that Manti Te'o defense, that great team. So you've got a dude that, again, is supremely qualified. They added Bob Diaco as an analyst. This is a guy who's been a head coach, who's been a defensive coordinator at major Power 5 programs, who's won the Broyles Award. He's an analyst on this staff now. You can kind of see what Brian Kelly's doing. He is stockpiling supremely talented and able coaches with vast amounts of experience. So if in the event that you move someone on staff or you lose someone, you've got someone on your support staff already ready to fill in that role. By the way, Bob Diaco is also coming on as an analyst who is going to help with the special teams as well. And he's got a lot of experience. He was a special teams coordinator from 1999 to 2004 at 3 different schools: Western Illinois, Eastern Michigan, and then Western Michigan. Then he went to Central Michigan. He was at all 3. He was at Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan, Central Michigan, back to back to back. And then he was the co-DC at Central Michigan, then went to Virginia, where he was a special teams coordinator for 3 years, in 06, 7, 8. And then he went to Cincinnati and became a defensive coordinator, then defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So basically he stopped running special teams, but he became a defensive coordinator. So this is a guy that has a ton of collegiate special teams experience as well, but mostly has been a defensive coordinator and a head coach over the last 15 years. A couple of things that I'll say. So, number one, I love adding John Jancek on the field and Bob Diaco to the staff. 2 dudes who got a ton of experience, supremely accomplished. Their resumes speak for themselves. Awesome additions to the staff. No problem with that whatsoever. My one real legitimate concern is you don't necessarily have a dedicated special teams coordinator. Yes, that's John Jancek is going to have that title. But that's not the only thing he's doing. He's going to be coaching the outside linebackers, and he'll also have the title of special teams coordinator, but it sounds like the way that they're going to handle this, and we'll wait for Brian Kelly to give us some definitive, or I guess some definition to how it's all going to be handled whenever they get ready for spring football. But John Jancek, who's been a coach for 30 years, has never been a special teams coach. So you're giving him that title in essence, but that's not the thing he does. And this reminds me of 2017. And we talked this, just hop in the way back machine with me and go back 6 years. But Ed Ogeron was the interim head coach in 2016. Ed did not like Bradley Dale Pivito. Maybe not personally, I don't want to say that, but Bradley Dale Pivito and special teams were a problem in 2016. And literally, Ed got hired on a Saturday. Sunday, he fired Bradley Dale Pivito. It was literally the first thing he did was fire Pivito. Well, in 2017, Ed didn't hire a special teams coordinator. Remember, they just divvied up the duties. And 2017 was atrocious. That's when they had Connor Culp and Jack Gonsolin, and neither guy really steadied as place kicker. You were rotating kickoff guys, kicking the ball out of bounds. You weren't great returning kicks. DJ Chark was your punt returner. Had some big moments. Obviously, the Auburn, none bigger than the Auburn punt return that year, but you were very bad on special teams. And Greg, I want to say this because it's kind of a point of Bob Diaco being in an analyst role as a guy who's done a ton in special teams. Greg McMahon was on that 2017 LSU staff as an analyst. And they were so bad on special teams in 2017 that Ed moved Greg McMahon up to an on-field role as the special teams coordinator in 2018, and that was maybe the best decision he made. I mean, they were great under Greg McMahon in 18, 19, well, really until he left. So that gives me a little bit of pause, a little cause for concern. So I love adding John Jancek on the field. I love adding Bob Diaco to the staff. That's no problem whatsoever. My concern is you were very bad at special teams. I know Shea printed this in his report. ESPN College Football Power Index efficiency rankings for special teams. LSU last year was 130th out of 131 teams. They were second to worst. That shouldn't come as a surprise. We all watched it. They were terrible. It's why you needed to make a change. What I would have liked to have seen was emphatically make this change with someone who is a very proficient, accomplished special teams coordinator to be better at that. The good news for LSU, remember, all of your specialists return. Damian Ramos is back. Jay Bramblett is back. your long snappers, your holders, like everybody's back. So you return all of your specialists, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was coordination of all of the units and coverage and kicking and all of the different nuance of special teams where LSU struggled. So they finished out the staff. You have your 10 full-time on-field assistants, and they'll divvy up special teams among a lot of different coaches, but Jancek will be the special teams coordinator. And fingers crossed, knock on wood, and hope that it's much better in 2023 because, boy, they were atrocious to watch all of last year. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.